What if I told you that the objects you keep from someone who has passed on could quietly shape your mood, your dreams, even the direction of your life? What if I told you that Edgar Cayce, one of the most documented psychics in modern history, warned repeatedly about the hidden influences attached to the belongings of the dead? Not out of fear, not out of superstition, but from what he described as the energetic fingerprints that linger long after a soul has left the physical world. Today, we're going to explore this little-known teaching, one that Cayce believed could either protect a household or slowly drain it of peace, clarity, and emotional balance. And once you hear it, you may never look at inherited objects the same way again. Cayce often spoke of the unseen forces that surround us, forces we sense, but rarely try to understand. He believed that every object absorbs impressions, memories, intentions, and emotional residue from the people who used it. He compared emotional energy to vibration or imprinting, something that lingers the way a scent lingers on clothing long after a person has walked away. According to Cayce's readings, objects belonging to the dead hold the strongest imprint of all because the emotional charge tied to death, grief, and transition can be powerful, messy, and unresolved. When those objects enter a new home, he suggested they also bring fragments of the previous owner's state of mind. Cayce claimed this didn't mean the objects were cursed or dangerous by nature. Rather, he believed they were still alive in an energetic sense, especially if the person who owned them experienced trauma, confusion, pain, or strong attachments before passing. These vibrations, he said, could blend with the energy of the person now holding the object, creating subtle shifts in mood or behavior. Some people might notice this as a heaviness, an uneasiness that comes from nowhere. Others might simply feel more tired, more irritable, or less mentally clear. In his readings, Cayce described cases where people unknowingly brought home items tied to unresolved emotions, rings passed down through a troubled family line, clothing worn during illness, or furniture inherited from someone who died feeling lonely or bitter. He suggested that these items can influence the new owner almost the way music influences emotion. Not through force, but through resonance. A vibration meets another vibration, and the two begin to harmonize. If the original owner carried sorrow, fear, or spiritual confusion, the new owner might begin to feel echoes of those states without understanding why. Cayce warned especially about objects that were deeply personal: jewelry, hairbrushes, journals, clothing, and items used daily while the owner was in a heightened emotional state. He believed these absorbed not only general vibration, but specific memory patterns. In modern terms, we might think of it as emotional data embedded within physical matter. He advised people to approach inherited items with awareness rather than anxiety, and to cleanse them through prayer, meditation, sunlight, or intentional blessing before placing them in a new environment. He also spoke about how some people are more sensitive than others. Those who are spiritually open, empathetic, intuitive, or dealing with emotional stress tend to absorb energies more easily. Cayce explained that when a person is emotionally open, they function like a tuning fork. They pick up the frequency of whatever is near them, including the emotional traces left on inherited belongings. He described how someone might bring home a ring from a relative who struggled with depression, and within days begin feeling a sadness that didn't belong to them. Not a haunting, not a presence in the dramatic sense, but an emotional echo left in the item itself. It was subtle, he said, but powerful enough to shift one's inner balance. One of the most documented readings involved a woman who kept a box of personal items passed down from a family member who had lived through years of bitterness and conflict. According to Cayce, the box carried what he called discordant vibrations, the emotional remnants of anger and unresolved turmoil. After keeping the box in her home, the woman reported increased arguments with her spouse, disturbed sleep, and overwhelming waves of irritability. Cayce suggested that cleansing or removing the items would restore peace in the home. When she followed through, she reported that the atmosphere immediately felt lighter and that the emotional tension dissolved almost overnight. Cayce believed the reason these influences were so strong is because objects belonging to the dead often carry uncompleted emotional energy. A person does not take their pain with them when they transition, he said, but the physical objects tied to them can hold the memory of those emotions. In one reading, he compared it to the way a room still feels heavy after someone has cried in it, or how a piece of music retains the emotion of the composer. The physical world remembers what passes through it. He also warned about objects tied to fear, illness, or loss. Clothing worn during chronic sickness, furniture from a room where someone experienced deep suffering, or tools used during a troubled period of life could carry what he described as confused vibrations. These, he said, were the most likely to disrupt the emotional stability of the person who inherited them. Not because they were evil, but because they were incomplete, still holding the momentum of the emotional struggle they once witnessed. Cayce encouraged people to pay attention to how they felt physically and emotionally after bringing a deceased person's belongings into their home. If the items seemed to bring a persistent heaviness, recurring dreams, sudden tension, or a feeling that something in the atmosphere had shifted, he said this was a sign that the energy of the object was not compatible with the new owner. He encouraged people to listen to their inner signals because the energy of an object often reveals itself through the way it subtly affects the environment. Interestingly, he also spoke of positive imprints. Objects belonging to people who lived with love, compassion, and spiritual clarity could radiate a calming or uplifting influence. A book cherished by a peaceful parent, a tool used joyfully by a craftsman, or a necklace worn by someone with a generous heart could bring comfort and warmth to the next generation. Cayce believed that energy is neither good nor bad in a moral sense. It simply continues the direction it was set in. Objects carry a momentum of their previous owner's emotional life. Yet Cayce was firm that items connected to trauma should be handled with caution. He pointed out that when a person passes with unresolved fear, loneliness, anger, or confusion, their belongings may still hold those emotional patterns. And if the new owner is going through stress or spiritual vulnerability, that lingering energy may resonate with them and amplify their inner struggles. For this reason, Cayce advised cleansing as a vital step before keeping anything from someone who passed on. This cleansing wasn't ritualistic or dramatic. He emphasized simple spiritual intention, prayer, spoken blessing, meditation over the object, or placing it in sunlight. The goal, he said, was to clear away emotional residue so that only the neutral or positive essence remained. Just as you would wash a piece of clothing before wearing it, he believed you should also cleanse its unseen imprint. Cayce also warned that objects connected to sudden or tragic deaths often carried the strongest emotional imprints of all. Not because the spirit was trapped or lingering, but because the event itself was so intense that the energy of fear, shock, or confusion could settle into whatever physical items were present at the time. In several readings, he encouraged families who inherited such belongings to approach them slowly, paying close attention to the atmosphere they created. He emphasized that energy imprints from trauma should never be taken lightly, even if the item appears harmless on the surface. He explained that people often mistake emotional resonance for their own mood. A person might blame stress, bad sleep, or personal issues, when in reality they are absorbing emotional traces from an object that carries a heavy imprint. Cayce said that our energetic bodies are sensitive instruments that respond unconsciously to the environments around us. When something doesn't feel right, when the air feels dense or our thoughts suddenly feel heavier, he believed it was often the influence of unrecognized energy coming from the physical world. Objects from the dead, he said, are simply more likely to carry residues because they were part of a life now closed, yet not fully resolved. He once described the way an object from someone who died in anger might influence its new owner. The person inheriting the item might suddenly feel irritable or restless, even if they have no reason to be. They might notice arguments occurring more frequently in their home or struggle with agitation they can't explain. Cayce stressed that these reactions weren't supernatural attacks, they were echoes, lingering emotional harmonics that had not yet been cleared. In contrast, he said items belonging to peaceful individuals could bring clarity and comfort. A rosary used faithfully in prayer might radiate calmness. A ring worn by someone who lived a life of kindness might bring a quiet sense of reassurance. Cayce believed that objects can be carriers of memory in a way that goes beyond physical evidence. They store intention and emotion, just as they store scratches, wear, and shape. When we inherit such items, we inherit the invisible imprint as well. He encouraged people to use intuition when deciding what to keep. If an item feels heavy or unsettling, that feeling is worth listening to. He said the body doesn't lie about energy. If something consistently feels off, even after cleansing, he believed it was better to part with the object rather than invite emotional disruption into one's home. In his view, spiritual well-being was more important than sentimentality, and releasing an object was not disrespectful to the dead. Instead, it was a way of allowing the past to rest. Cayce's approach was not fear-based. He was not warning people to avoid all items from the deceased. Instead, he offered a framework for spiritual hygiene. Just as we clean our physical spaces, he believed we must also clean the unseen energies attached to the items we bring into them. He stated that every object has a story, and when we take it into our lives, we allow that story to mingle with our own. That mingling can uplift us, or it can subtly weigh us down. One of his most interesting teachings was that energy from objects interacts more strongly with people who are already going through emotional change. Someone grieving, moving through a major life transition, or dealing with anxiety may be more receptive to the imprints on inherited items. Cayce compared this to a radio signal. The more open the receiver, the clearer the transmission. This openness, he said, can make people vulnerable to absorbing emotional fragments that do not belong to them. He also explained that homes themselves absorb emotional imprints over time. When items containing strong energies are placed in a room, they can gradually influence the overall atmosphere. A room may feel darker or more restless, not because of the occupant, but because of something that was added to the space. Cayce said that many people unknowingly struggle with the emotional weight of their environment, mistaking it for personal failure or inner conflict. To counter this, he often recommended a combination of prayer, intention, and light. He believed that spiritual intention could clear emotional residue, just as sunlight clears a room of dust. The goal was not to remove the memory of the item, but to remove the emotional tension attached to it. Only then, he said, could the object become neutral again, ready to serve its new purpose without carrying the past into the present. Cayce believed that once an object was cleared of its lingering emotional imprint, it could be integrated safely and even meaningfully into a new person's life. But he also taught that some items carry patterns so deeply embedded that no amount of cleansing will fully neutralize them. These, he said, should be released with respect. Holding on to them out of obligation, guilt, or fear only allows old emotional echoes to continue shaping the present. In several readings, he emphasized that the dead do not cling to their belongings. The attachments we feel to an object come from our own emotions, not from the soul who once used it. He described the transition after death as liberating, a release from the heaviness of physical memory. It is the living, he said, who hold on to objects with a weight that sometimes becomes burdensome. The soul has already moved forward. It is we who remain in relationship with what was left behind. He encouraged people to think about why they keep an item from someone who passed. Is it love? Is it comfort? Or is it fear of letting go? Cayce said that when an object keeps us connected to grief instead of gratitude, it may no longer serve our spiritual growth. He believed the purpose of inheritance is to carry forward the best of someone's memory, not the unresolved energy of their pain. Understanding this difference can transform how we relate to objects and the stories they carry. Cayce also spoke about dreams as a way the subconscious reveals how an inherited object is affecting us. If someone begins dreaming intensely after bringing an item into their home, especially dreams involving the deceased, conflict, or emotional heaviness, he suggested paying attention. Dreams, he said, are the language of the inner mind. They often reveal energies we overlook in waking life. In this way, the subconscious can tell us when an inherited object is stirring something that needs to be addressed. In his view, the purpose of these reactions is not to frighten, but to guide. Emotional resonance is information. It tells us where healing is needed, where release is necessary, or where a deeper understanding can bring peace. Cayce believed that the physical world is always communicating with us through subtle sensations, intuitive impressions, and emotional shifts. The belongings of those who passed on are simply more concentrated sources of this communication. He taught that before accepting any inherited item, it's important to pause and set intention. Ask yourself how the object makes you feel. Does it bring warmth or unease? Does it calm or disturb? Our feelings, Cayce said, are not random, they are a compass. When approached with awareness, even objects with heavy imprints can become teachers. They remind us to cleanse our environments, to honor our intuition, and to release what no longer serves our path. Cayce described the home as a spiritual container, a place where our energies settle and intertwine. Everything within that space participates in our emotional landscape. This is why he emphasized the importance of maintaining an environment that supports peace, harmony, and clarity. Bringing in an object from the dead without intention can introduce a discordant note into that harmony. But bringing it in with awareness can preserve the integrity of the space. Even more importantly, Cayce wanted people to understand that energy is transformable. Just as a negative imprint can weigh us down, a positive imprint can uplift us. When an object has been cleansed, blessed, or intentionally honored, its energy can shift. He believed that spiritual intention has the power to rewrite the emotional memory of matter. An item once tied to sorrow can become a symbol of healing. A belonging once tied to pain can become a reminder of love, strength, or resilience. He urged people not to fear objects from the deceased, but to respect them. Respect the life they touched. Respect the emotions they witnessed. Respect the subtle way they carry stories forward. And then choose consciously what place, if any, they should hold in your life. In the end, Cayce's warning was not about ghosts, curses, or superstition. It was about emotional awareness. He wanted people to understand that the physical world remembers us, and that memory can influence those who come after. By cleansing, honoring, or releasing the objects we inherit, we participate in a cycle of spiritual clarity. We free ourselves, and we allow the past to rest. When we bring an object into our home, we bring a piece of a story. What matters most, Cayce said, is whether that story harmonizes with the life we are trying to build. The choice, the awareness, and the intention are ours. And in that intention lies the power to protect our peace, honor the past, and shape the energy of our future with clarity and purpose.